Hello. So, if you take place, we will start. Welcome everyone to the third edition of the Software Developer Thursday 2023. Today I will start with a short presentation of what the NOI is doing and why we do this event. The NOI Tech Park actually is defining the specialization strategy for all his fields: green, food, health, digital, automotive, automation, which with three pillars where the three topics want to become a specialist in the next years. We, as a digital unit, we would like to focus on IoT, on the collection of data, on how to collect data from sensor, and then on Open Data Hub and how to share the data and make community through the data. And then the last point, the elaboration of the data, which is the AI part of it. So today we have here Eduardo Guerra, which will present us how to do software analytics based on data. So today's software developers Tuesday, I see it related to the AI, no, because we are analyzing data, and so that's why we try to make dissemination on our three pillars. So now I won't steal much more time to Eduardo, and I pass him the stage. Thank you, Eduardo, and the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me exchange here. Good night, everyone. Thanks for being here. I know some of you has expectations that I will show movie stuff, but unfortunately not today, but I have other cool references in the presentation. So let's see if I can go beyond the movies. So today I'm going to talk about software analytics, right? And why let's say I start to go into this subject is because I saw that, for example, using metrics, it's something that can really help in software development, but I see that people get stuck between guessing and some random metrics and don't really get the real benefit they can get with that, right? So before starting, I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. This is my email. I work at Unibizeta. I come from Brazil, right? From a state called Minas Gerais, but I used to work close to São Paulo. I have, I think my courses in Coursera were probably one of the the first in Portuguese in the field of computer science. I maintain an open source project called Sphinge Framework, which is not like one framework, it's more like an umbrella project for several open source framework solutions. We have frameworks from access control, gamification, continuous experimentation, all of them based on innovative ideas, with most of them with papers published. I will jump this one. I have two books about software design published, unfortunately, only in Portuguese. And just something different. I am a board game designer and I have some board games published. And actually, I teach a board game design course at Unibizeta. This period has 60 students enrolled in the board game course. Just something random about it. Okay, so let's go to the presentation. Okay, so I hear many times in software development people saying like, okay, I think the clients would like if we change this user interface. I think it's better this way, so he go there and change it, right? So I think we will have more clients and maybe we will need another server. So they go and invest in upgrading the infrastructure, right? I think this algorithm can be a problem for performance, and let's go optimize it. So the developer goes there and change it, or I think this part of the code needs urgent refactoring and go there and maybe spend 1 or 2 days refactoring that code, right? What are the problems on these statements? I think, right? Because let's get there. So sometimes if you ask like how development team make decisions, you will hear a lot based on our experience, right? So meet the experience, right? So sometimes like, and I can say that as let's say someone has one foot in the academia, because many times I want, let's say I'm doing a research, I'm doing an experiment, and for me it's clear, for example, that we will have an improvement on productivity or something else, and no, right? So, or sometimes I get a result that it was completely unexpected, right? So when we don't measure, right, when we are not, let's say we are taking decisions only based on experience without proving if they are right, we have the chance to make big mistakes, right? So for the amount of resources that we are going to spend doing that, you really need to be sure, right? Just as an example, because all of these statements I pick up from my real experience, right? I remember that I was doing consulting in a company that they are going to invest on like duplicating their infrastructure, right? And that will be like for have redundancy, right? So they are going to invest a lot of money doing that. And then when we start seeing the numbers, seeing the metrics and everything, they just saw that was not a priority at all, right? And that will be a big investment just because they think, right, that that might happen, right? Okay, so okay, but we do have a lot of tools that give metrics, right? So I just pick up, for example, this is Sonar Cube, a very nice tool that you can get a lot of colorful stuff, right? And then you can, for example, maybe you don't understand this, but when you see everything green looks good, right? So you call your manager, came here. See? Green. What that means, he don't care, right? He just want to see some colors and numbers. 90% looks nice, right? So then the thing is, for example, this is a tool you can install, run on your software, will give you a lot of these numbers, but and then you can show and talk about them. But when you ask what you are going to do with that, it's like this. right? So it's all of these numbers, all of these metrics, and people just are like this, right? Because, for example, today you pick up, for example, a cloud infrastructure and you deploy your application there, you can get access to a lot of metrics, right? And oh, look how great is my application. But are you actually using that for something useful? Right? So that's the question. So that's why I say sometimes people get between guessing, right? That is making those decisions just based on experience, right? Which is a nice way to say they think, right? And these metrics that actually you don't know what you're going to do with it, right? For me, this reminds me of a very famous number, which is 42, right? I told you I will have a reference. You can say, but what is for 42? Do you know?
The answer is everything.
Yes. So for who don't know what is 42, in the Douglas Adams book, right? The Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide. I don't know the name in English because I read it in Portuguese. So of the Hitchhiker's Guide of the Galaxy, there was this computer that was like millions or billions of years processing to find what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything. And after that amount of time processing, the computer finally gave an answer, 42. And then the problem is, what is the question? Right? So we know the answer to life, the universe, and everything, but we don't know what is the question for the life, the universe, is everything. So for me, having the metrics, and it's just like that. You have the answer, but you don't know the question, right? So you get a lot of numbers, beautiful numbers. If they are green, better, so you can show your manager. And but in the end, you don't know what is the question. So you don't know what problem are you solving, right? So let's say how I see people using metrics nowadays, it's like this, right? So if you talk to someone like finding what metrics can help you to solve the project problems. No, I don't want that. I want to figure out what I can do with the metrics, with the tools I have installed. So it's like reverse engineering. I have the metrics, I want to find out I want to give some use to them, right? I don't want to solve the problems, right? So that is, let's say, where the analytics came to help, right? Because if we think nowadays we have a lot of data in the software development environment, right? And we can use that to make decisions in our favor, right? And I actually see that it's like even in projects that analyze data for their clients, they don't analyze their own data, right? So, so meet the analytics. What are analytics like? It's a data-driven approach to support decision making. Like we use a lot in marketing in order to reach and better understand customers. I have a friend that has a startup for market research. For example, he was hired by like a big store in Brazil to do a research to see, for example, they have like two big, one actor and one TV presenter, and they want to know who has a greater acceptance with their public, because they want to invest a lot of money in a marketing campaign with that. So the thing is, for example, instead of just, for example, maybe the owner of the company likes one more, right? But that don't matter, right? Then what matters is which one will reach their clients better, right? So it's to make these data-driven decisions, to base your decisions on data, right? So what are actually the software analytics, right? Is to enable software practitioners to use the data that they have in their environments to obtain insightful and actionable information to do these data-driven tasks, right? So you can use all the data you have, right? But the main point is that to obtain insightful and actionable information, right? That means that the output for data analytics is not a number, but should be a decision, should be an action, right? Should be something useful, right? Just a number, it's like the 42, right? So next time a colleague call you and just show some cool tool that he measures something, you ask, and you are going to use that for, and then if he don't know, just say 42, right? So then you tell me the story when you're going to point for someone 42, right? Okay, so what kind of things we can analyze with that? So many things like development practices, testing methods, bug treatment, productivity, quality, services, maintenance, right? Even the requirements. I want to see, for example, for example, we have today continuous experimentation, right? We can collect data to know what our users want. We can collect data about the software architecture. So the point is, we have a lot of numbers. That's a lot of metrics we can get, right? So, but we need to see what is important from our project. So what we need, what is more important to know at that moment to make the decision that maybe will drive the project. Okay, so where we can get this data, right? So we can get from development tools, bug reports. We can use the application, the data itself. So go there in your database, get what is there, maybe the transactions, the kind of transactions. You can get from the code repository. You can get from your running software, from your runtime environment. And for example, there enters a little bit of the DevOps, right, that can get this feedback from the production environment, source code, documentation. So we have a lot of things we can figure out. We have a lot of data sources we can explore, right? And these are some values I use when I'm for analytics, right? So the first thing is that like every measurement should be done for a reason, right? Just don't measure things because I don't know, to get something in green, right? The entire team needs to be aware of the analytics process, right? They should understand why they are collecting that metric, why that is being measured, because let's say it's really, okay, get that. Okay, so it's really easy for you to, let's say, I see many cases where people that, let's say, are not aware of why we are measuring this, do things that go against the goal. For example, I see many companies, for example, that puts like, okay, that's a minimum number of lines of code, a maximum numbers of lines of code per method, right? So, for example, if you pass that, you don't commit, right? So why they are doing that? Because there is a statistic that good code has like that amount of lines of code that goes beyond that, then it can have problems. But the thing is, this is a statistic thing, right? I can imagine several ways to break a method and make it much worse, right? And if my goal is not to improve the quality, but just to break the method in a way I can commit it, right? And then, let's say I lose all the goal on doing that thing, right? A real, let's say, a real story. There was a colleague that was doing consulting in a company, and they are picking up a lot of bugs in production. And the manager called him and said, "Okay, I don't know what is happening because we have like 90% coverage of our code, the test coverage, and we are not supposed to have that many bugs, right?" And then he goes there. Let's see. That's really strange, right? So then it will come back. Okay. He goes there, and let me see your test. The test did not have assertions. They just invoke the code. Why? To get the coverage metric, right? And the developers are doing that because they want like to break the system, because they want to cheat. No, because they want to commit the code, because there are something that blocks if they don't get the coverage. So they just call the methods, right? Oh, now it's okay and we can commit. Why? Because they are not aware about, okay, that might seem too basic, but it's not, right? It's like there is a barrier saying, okay, you need to reach this to commit your work. And you get the junior developer, okay, I pass, right? And let's go, right? And if they are not aware of why you are measuring this, why we have this limit, right? If it's like, okay, we want to improve our quality, how we can do that? What metric we want to improve? And then if everyone is involved on this decision and everyone is aware, okay, maybe if we reduce our methods, we can get there. So let's put this, but not like just put the limitation and let them guess why. So everyone should participate and be aware why we are measuring these things. Because let's say the metric should be a way to get information about something, should not become the goal, right? To reach that metric. The project cannot stop just to implement analytics, because I already see like, okay, that's fantastic. Let's install this, do that, and then you see it's a huge effort. Like you need to stop your team like for 3 weeks just to get that information, right? Should something that it's like part of your development, right? So you should be able to do that as you develop without stopping everything just to measure. And the result should be decisions and actions and not numbers, right? One of the problems is that when you start seeing let's say most of the cases on software analytics, you can see, for example, that hardly you see for small and medium-sized teams. You mostly see for like big companies. Like I was reading like a very nice case of analytics where you have a team of PhD just to take care of the analytics, right? So then if you can do that, that's great. But that's, unfortunately, that's not the case for most of the teams. So we need to make it fit. So what I'm going to present here, it's a set of patterns we identify on how you can do analytics on these teams. Okay, I will share the slides later, right? But this is just I will talk briefly about it, then I will go what came out from here, right? So the first thing is like what you need to know, because let's say there are many things you can solve, there are many things you can know, but you need to focus on what is important for your team right now, right? And that is different for each team. Maybe my problem right now is an architectural decision, right? Maybe my problem is that I don't have enough testing. Maybe my problem is that I'm not sure what my user needs, right? So I think it's in your head right now, what is the big question from your project right now? And maybe in the next month will be another question. Maybe past month was another question. But the thing is, you need to focus on what are the key issues for you, right? And then after you get these issues, you choose how can we get some information that will be useful for making this decision. And then, for example, you choose the metrics. You don't choose the metric just because, let's say, you have the tool that measures it, but you choose what information can give you some insights, right? And then you plan the analytics implementation. Then you're going to figure out what tools I need, what kind of things I need, what would be the effort to do that. Sometimes, for example, you need to do, for example, that's one of the mistakes, one of the problems, for example, to relying on what the tools give us. Because sometimes, for example, what the tool gives to you, it's like brute data. And what you need is to maybe squeeze it a little bit to get what you really want, the information that will be useful. And then if you start with, okay, I have this, what I can do with that? The better way is like, I have this issue, what information will be useful? And then sometimes you use the tools, but sometimes you need some further analysis. You plan this as part of your development effort, like you plan the tasks, because if you don't plan the tasks, you never do it. Like, oh, did you do anything about the analytics? Oh, next iteration. Oh, next iteration. That never happens, right? And we even have, for example, these embedded improvements. It's because, for example, okay, refactor that part of the code. That's some hours task. They will never do it, right? But if you say, okay, every time that you do this kind of task, you go and get a little bit further on this, and then you can use the metrics to follow this small step. That works a lot. Then you plan to do it in small steps. For example, one of the biggest mistakes I see is like, okay, we did the analytics, it's beautiful, now we know what we need to do, let's do everything at once. The team will never stop. So plan to do it in small steps in a way that you can continue the development and keep doing it. Then establish some reachable goals, right? It's not like, okay, we don't have tests yet, or our testing is small, but our goal is to have 100% coverage. Like, okay, that's an impossible goal that the team does not see accomplished, right? Try to establish a goal that the teams can achieve maybe in 1 or 2 weeks. Even if that goal is small, then you can get another goal, because then the team will feel that they are advancing on that issue, right? And then these quality standards in I don't know if here you have something similar, but in Brazil we have this game that, for example, we do in parties after the peers, usually, that, for example, you put some rope or something, and people need to go behind it, right? And usually dancing or something. The rule is that once the things go down, don't go up again. So you pass it, and then goes down, and you need to pass it again until everybody falls, something like that. And that's like the quality standards. Like, so, okay, you reach something you want, so you keep measuring it, so you make sure you don't go back to where you are. So, okay, you were able to pass here, let's fix it as our quality standard, and then let's put some reachable goal that maybe if I get it a little bit down, maybe you can still pass it, right? Maybe you will fall, but let's then maybe next time. And yeah, so basically there are something else, but let me go to something more concrete. One of the problems that I see in this analytics decision making, even if you have some of this process usually is not visible for everyone. It's like this room where, for example, in the corner here you have the goal you want to achieve. Here you have the metric. Maybe behind the bed it's the decision you made. So maybe if you find out the decision, you will never know that it was from this goal and based on this metric, right? So sometimes, for example, imagine that the architect decides to measure something to make a decision, right? So maybe the other developers just see the measurement, right? Or just see the decision and don't know what it came from, right? So the things are like spread, and that what makes difficult for people to follow and understand what is going on, because that is like a reasoning process, right? So let's say you have a goal and then measure something, get the data, get some insights from there, right? And then make some decision, and maybe that will do a feedback loop, right? So you're going to find out, maybe you refine a little bit more your goal. But let's say usually that's not visible to the others, right? To follow. It's like, for example, when the manager asks what you are doing, I'm measuring code quality. Why you are losing time with that? It's different to say, I'm working on that problem that you gave me, that we are having, that the clients are complaining about that, about having bugs on that part. Or about the thing you told me about the performance at this time is not good enough. I'm working on that problem. When you have this traceability, you can say, okay, this came from this metric, and then I generated this task to reach this goal, right? Then it's visible. It's connected to a real need of the project, and it's even easier to justify it with your manager. Okay, so based on that, we created a software analytic canvas, which is a tool that can help teams, usually made for medium and small teams, to keep track of the analytics process, right? So let me see. Let's see, how much time do I have? So, and then we have here the key issue. So here we're going to put the problems that you have, and we'll pick up the most important, or the like two, maximum three most important ones. Then you will pick up which measurements can help you. Then here is like abstract for avoiding you to get stuck to the tool, right? Here you are going to figure out, okay, I need to measure that, how I'm going to do that. After analyzing the data, you will find some highlights, some things that catch your attention. Then interpreting this, you will have some insights like, this is what happened, right? And based on that, you will define some goals and make some decisions. And here are the tasks. Even if you have another tool that can help you to control the tasks, I recommend always to keep it here. Just, oh, why we don't have anything here? Oh, because we still need to implement that, right? So then you can understand where you are and what will be the next step here. So even if you pick up this task and put, for example, in Trello and another tool that you control your team, having it here give the view on how is this process. So I have 4 cases here. They are based on real cases. I have one on software architecture, one on source code, one on business, and one on the development process, right? So I will start with the architecture one, if it appears. Okay. And then you choose the second, right? So, yes, so the idea of the canvas is to help on this reasoning. And as I said, everything is on a different place and the team does not have this visibility. The idea of the canvas is to make it visible for everyone and help the team to discuss and reason together about these issues, right? So it's a simple tool, but we use it in 2 companies. We did case studies in a software startup and in a multinational company. These case studies were master thesis in University of Porto in Portugal. And in both cases, the canvas worked pretty well and helped the team to figure, of course, it was not perfect. We learned a few things, but like for example, one of the companies, they don't have metrics background enough to know what they can measure to solve the problem or to know which kind of problem, and then we implemented one additional thing. The other one have a big problem and didn't know what to do, measure, know what to do, but never have time to actually implement the improvements. And then that's why we proposed this embedded improvements practice, and then it worked well. So, but let's say in both cases, the company was really happy to use this tool because it helped them to actually, it's like, you know, these problems that everybody kind of know but don't know actually. It was a way like to pop up what was happening and why it was happening on their faces. Like, okay, now we actually know what is happening, how we can solve it. Okay, so let's pick up about software architecture. So this is, as I said, it's you know, these movies, like it's inspired by real facts. So it's kind of this, right? I came from a part of Brazil that we have something we call causos. Right? So a causa, what is this? Is it's the true version of the story. I don't know, but for sure it's the most interesting, right? So that's a cause, right? So inspired on real facts. So the key issue, why are sometimes reports take too long to be generated by the software? That's not something that kind of happens always, but sometimes these reports took a lot of time to be generated. Right? So nobody knows why, and we want to find out. That was like the biggest issue they had. And sometimes, and that's like this. But let's run one right now. And then they run and it was fast. But then you have the clients complaining that it was taking long. So it's the version of "in my machine works," right? I bet you heard that already, right? So so let's say first of all, response time. So let's see actually how much time the report is taking to be generated, right? So let's get this information from production. The request rate. So how much requests for generating the report we have, right? And also the CPU usage on the server, right? So we decided, for example, to use logs from the application. So we implemented some logs. Actually, we put the to-do tasks here to implement the logs, analyze these runtime logs, and to configure a tool to monitor the CPU on the server, right? So we decided to use that as the tools, right? And then when we measure, so we do this once. Notice that, for example, even in this case, not having the CPU data yet, we can already take a look at these and see if we can see some highlights, right? So based on that, we saw that this large delay is when multiple reports were requested at the same time. So we actually see that, okay, when we have many reports being requested at the same time is when we have the longest time for returning these reports. And then we implemented this tool, and we actually see that it were exactly in these moments we have a CPU usage extremely high, and that's why probably they are taking long to be processed, right? And then what we do, we pick up these that are like things in the data that call our attention, and let's see what is actually going on, right? So one of the things we figure out is what happens. The user requests a report, and then when it takes long, he refresh, and then actually he's doing another request, and then takes long, he refreshes again. So actually, instead of processing one report for that client, we are processing, like in the worst time possible, like 5 or 6 reports for each client, because they are trying again, and then the processing of the first one is being lost, right? And we talk to the clients and say, okay, these reports you need immediately, and they say no, right? For example, okay, if it's generated, I don't know, in 5 or 10 minutes, for us that's fine. So let's say we did not need to generate this report immediately. So for example, here we take a look in this data and also talk to the client to see if that is how are actually their needs according to this requirement, right? So in this case, for example, we decided a goal that, for example, if the CPU usage passed some threshold, we would, for example, okay, then we have a problem, then we need to do something about it. And here, we made a decision to make the processing of these reports asynchronous. So in a way that, for example, when a user requests a report, we say, okay, we received your request, we will send you an email when the report is ready. So in many times, they just, and in the system, they can also see, for example, the status of the report. So we put that in a queue and process. So in the end, what happens, we keep doing this just by reducing the repetitions. We saw that it makes a lot of pattern, and what will happen is that we can, by processing this in parallel, we also make this more scalable, right? So that was how we get, we have a problem, we don't know, then we measure something, and then follow this process, right? And then, for example, then I have now the new tasks to make this happen, right? So, what do you prefer, source code, development process, or business? Business. You will have the slide, so then you can see all of them. Business, right? So, the question was, what features are not being used by our clients? Right, so they wanted to know if there are something that the clients were not using, just to know what, let's say, they should not invest in anymore, right? So, the measure, they use like an access log to know how much each feature is being invoked, and they use like a feature mapping that, let's say, from a high-level perspective, maps, for example, a URL to a given feature that makes sense for the business, right? And we basically use log parsing and processing, and also association between access and user role. So we want to know what kind of user was accessing which role. So in this access log, we have, okay, this access came from an administrator or came from a supervisor, or I pick up some generic rules, but okay, the company has some more specific. So what we find out in the high, so yes, of course, we need to put that in the to-do if we don't have it, right? After it's done, we have, for example, we have a feature for product association. I invented this one, but in the real case it was a feature there. And actually only one user was using that feature. And let's say it was an expensive feature to create. We have, for example, two views that shows the same data, but we saw that one had much more access than the other. So that was also an information that called our attention, right? And we find out, for example, that a group of features have much more access than the others, right? I think that should be normal for any system. So the thing is that, okay, now that we get these highlights, let's see what it means to us, right? So the first thing we see that when we go talk to the clients to see why they are not using the product association feature is because it has actually an incomplete documentation, and it was like hard to understand. And actually the user that was using was the user that requests that feature. But let's say for the other ones, we figure out that for them would be useful, but they actually didn't know how to use. Right? And in this case, we find out that when they open the page, one of the views were opened automatically. So that's why this one has more views. Right? So then we find out, for example, that this is not really a problem. Right? So they open, they see the view, some goes to the other, but this is not a real problem. And as a decision, for example, we decided that we need to document better our product association feature, and maybe even advertise it, I don't know, make a presentation or something to our clients so they can understand better this feature. So for example, even the decision here and the actions might not be, for example, in let's say, does not need to be a technical action, right? And in this case, for example, when we show that for the manager says, oh, this is not a problem, but actually, if I want to, actually, this is UX. D came by mistake. So if I want to improve my UX, if I do that concentrating on these features, I will have a big impact by having a lower effort. Right, so this is something that, let's say, it was not a problem, but from the data, they detected an opportunity, right? And then we have another question is how the UX can be improved on this most used feature. That's not also an easy question, right? We have here the to-do, and we have a new issue. What we do? What metrics we can put there to find out some information that can be useful for us. And then, let's say, this process continues, right? Okay, so let me see, I'm on time, right? Okay, yeah, but I will stop here. I will let the slides with the two other cases. One about quality I will just show you the problem so you get curious and go into that. This one is like why our team cannot estimate the sprint tasks. It was not like they are getting late. It's like they are not doing the thing in the time they say they want to do. You say, how much time we are going to take to do that? And they get wrong and wrong in different sprints. How many times you see that happen, right? So that's a very common problem. So how will we solve this? For the source code, also, how can we reduce the number of bugs in our system, right? So the first thing, like, what are these bugs, where they are, right? What kind, right? So getting this information, then you can act on it, right? So I will let you take a look. You have my email in the presentation, so if you want to get in touch. So I hope with this, you stop like with the 42, like having these magic numbers that nobody knows what to do about. Also, maybe use your experience, but then try to prove it, right, with the metrics. Like I always say, like a good architect, a good developer, they do use the experience to have the insights, right? But then they try to prove it, right, with metrics and everything. So the insights will be good, for example, for analyzing the data, to figure out what is the right question, right? But cannot be just that, right? So if someone has a question, it will be a pleasure to answer.
Thank you, Eduardo. So now it's time to discuss and post questions. So do you have questions, something you want to share with the group?
Yes, sorry. My question is basically, in a team, who is doing this? Do you have a dedicated person who is doing analytics and who is pushing the team? Or is it the developer himself or herself? I can't imagine that. But
Yeah,
who's doing the analytics?
Let's say,
Thank you.
The thing is, usually who pushes the process is who is more interested in solving that problem. So in a way that usually you have some, when you are, let's say, implementing the technique on your team, usually you have someone that kind of leads in terms of guiding the team on how to use this kind of tool. But after that, usually who leads the process is who is interested in solving this, right? So, for example, if you have a business problem, then it can be, for example, the PO, right? So talking to the developers, figuring out and get the support. Maybe if it's an architectural problem, then the software architect lead the process. But I think it's important to everyone knows what is going on, right? So what we are measuring, why we are measuring, what the highlights, why we are making this decision based on data, because then they learn the process and then they can use the process themselves for solving their problems. Right? So let's say usually, once it's implemented, it becomes part of the team's, let's say, way of doing things. And then we start using this more data-driven approach.
So you're talking out of your experience with teams where you did consultancy or something?
Yeah, let's say I was the guy that usually goes there, teach them how to use it, and usually there was like let's say the member of the team that kind of leads the implementation, right? But then let's say I left them with that, right? But let's say usually, for example, who leads the project is who is usually more interested in seeing it solved, right? So, for example, in a case like one of the cases in In Portugal, for example, it was the DevOps lead, so he picked up a performance problem they have, and they want to figure out where it came from. The other one, for example, was more like the tech lead from programming, so they want to more like improve the code quality, and so we pick up from more from that direction. So, but I think once the team learn how to use the tool, they will start to see, okay, we have this problem. How can we measure this?
Okay, thank you.
I do have also a question, and it's regarding the opposite of what Patrick asked you. Who is the person most difficult to convince to use, and which are the most difficult things or difficult experience you had in introducing such a tool?
Let's say, in the end, let's say, when you talk about this, everybody is excited, but then everybody's busy, right? I think the biggest challenge is like convince people that, let's say, worth investing in something. That's why, for example, you shouldn't just use the analytics process for a random problem. You should use it for the problems that matters, where it hurts, right? So then it's important for your team. But in the end, for example, you see that's important to refactor, it's important to improve the performance, that's a problem, but then you have the PO keep giving features to implement, and they never had time to do that. So let's say, I think like the biggest let's say difficulty, it's like this, how to balance time, right? And let's say there are some tactics, right? And that comes also from let's say it's the same problem, for example, when a software architect wants to do some technical stuff and maybe have a PO that does not have a technical background, try to explain to him the importance of that, right? So let's say getting some time in the backlog for executing these analytics tests. Some of the techniques, like for example, doing it in small steps or trying to embed some of these tasks in the normal development, right, are some things that make easier for them to introduce this. But I would say, like, when you say that everybody thinks it's a great idea, but they don't have time for that.
Thank you. Someone else has...
Yes, another thing. So another thing is like this lack of experience with metrics, right? So in the beginning, they okay, we have this problem. The first thing, for example, in one of the themes, they what are your main problems? Oh, it's this one, but it's a problem they know how to solve it. They just need to do it, right? So no, that's not the kind of problem the analytics will help you. It's the problems you have, and you don't know what it is, what is the cause, and it will help you to find out, right? So sometimes, and even, okay, I have this problem, but what metrics can I use? So this lack of experience is also difficult. So usually you need some, let's say, it's not magic, you need someone that has a little bit of experience at least to lead the team in the beginning on, okay, you have this metric, then you can get this. So a little bit, let's say, for me, it's a little bit natural because that's what we do in the academics too, right? So we get a problem, we get data, we analyze, but let's say for many people, this process is not straightforward. So it's also break a little bit this cultural thing.
Okay, thank you. Someone else has some feedback or question?
Maybe a case, a story.
Nobody?
Let's break the ice with a presentation.
Yeah. So I would ask you guys to make a short presentation around. Just say your name, what you are doing, why you are here in 3 words. So I will start. I'm Stefano Seppi, working at NOI. Everyone of you probably knows me. I'm hosting the event and I'm interested in IoT, open data and open source.
Okay. My name is Patrick Honewein. I work for NOI Tech Bank, like Stefano. We are doing, yes, digital projects, and I'm happy that University of Bolzano is supporting us and to see you all here. Yeah.
She's my daughter.
I'm Fabio, I study in the University and I was a student of Eduardo, so I just came here to watch.
You still studying?
Yeah.
Ah,
I'm in my second semester.
Yeah, I'm Linus, also studying together with Fabio and Matteo, and we just saw the posting of you in our Teams channel promoting this talk tonight, and we thought, oh, it sounds interesting, so now we're here.
I also told them there will be food. So.
Yeah, my name is Matteo Fiore, I'm studying with Linus and Fabio, and I was a student.
Thank you for coming.
Hello, I'm Andreas. I work at Converto and I'm a software developer.
Hi, Gabriele. I'm Gabriele. I'm a software developer. I work here for Group of Us. And to tell the truth, I'm here because I really liked the movie presentation last time.
Oh, nice. I hope the 42 was a good reference because the other presentation was.
There was also Pulp Fiction.
yeah.
Yes. Yes, of course. It was published.
I'm Simon Dalva. I'm also working here at the NOI Tech Park with Patrick and Stefano as a software architect. And yeah, I'm mainly responsible for the mobility data of the Open Data Hub.
Hello, I'm Davide Emanuelli. I am a mechanical engineer. I'm here to learn something new. I work for the Isocel company.
Hi, I'm Valentina. I work for the software as a web developer, and I came here today because I was here the first time when you presented Matomo and then Google Analytics data. It was interesting, and so an opportunity I came here.
Are you working? I didn't get.
At the software.
So nice to see that people are coming back, not coming like once. I can ask you to go back to my presentation.
Yes.
Those slides to present. Thank you. So I will be really quick. Discussion time, we already had it. Then I will introduce you to the upcoming events. So the 19th of May, we will organize the Open Data Hub Day. We will present what we did in the last year in the project Open Data Hub. And we are now also collecting some proposals. So if you have projects that are using data of Open Data Hub or using open data, creating open data, or whatever you think it's related also to an architecture of such a problem, don't be shy and send us a thought proposal. We will be happy to see it, evaluate it, and hear you at the Open Data Hub Day, the 19th of May, and the call for speaker will close the 20 March 2023. Then, in a month, we will meet here again for another Software Developer Thursday. Next time there will be Adriano Venturini of Suggesto, a company, I think a spin-off the University of Bozen-Bolzano, maybe, or it's working with the group of Ricci, Professor Ricci, and they will present participatory tourism. So they collect data through IoT, they analyze it, and they do some AI-based and suggestion system based on those data that they collect. So they fulfill the complete house of the digital team specialization strategy. And so if you are interested, just go on our website under the event section. You will find there how to register for the next month. And around the mid of March, I will send you also a reminder with the links and everything. So hope to see you there. Thank you for coming, and see you the next time. And don't be shy, networking now.
Yes, and if someone is interested